Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Fateless podcast episode. Joining me from the Fateless team is going to be Simon and Sham. And then our special guest for this episode is going to be Colred from the Colred Plays YouTube channel. How you doing today, man? Go ahead and let people know a little bit about yourself and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thanks. I'm doing great. So my name is Colred. I have a YouTube channel where I do free-to-play content for Raid Shadow Legends. Outside of that, I am a longtime gamer, basically my whole life. Growing up with board games. I mean, the first game I ever learned to play was chess, I think. And then just kind of, went through all the board game phases. I remember when Pac-Man came out, so I'm I've been playing games for my whole life. Strategy games, RTSs, RPGs, MMOs, and MOBAs, and then eventually here to Gacha games and hero collectors. So
free to play, man. That's awesome. So what are you I'm free to play everywhere, or this is specific to Raid, or is it because some people, for me, whenever I go free to play, if I'm gonna really get into something, it's almost like part of the challenge for me. But how do you approach it?
Yeah, that's definitely one of my free to play aspects. I think people go free to play for several reasons. One of the reasons is maybe you just don't have money for gaming at the time, right? You're just a broke gamer. I've definitely gone through those phases where it's I'm just looking for a cheap gaming experience. So there's that. Other people, look for the challenge in free to play. You can pay to win, or you can go free to play and get that extra challenge. I'm definitely some of that. With Raid specifically, I am free to play for at least a significant reason is that I don't like their monetization strategies. I feel like Plarium takes advantage of its player base in a way that I don't agree with. And so I have spent money in other games. I'm happy to do so. But for this particular game, I have chosen not to, not only for the challenge, but also because I honestly don't want to give them any money.
And was that something you were aware of then before you started playing the game? Did you already have this kind of perception of this is my take on this company? Or is it something you kind of developed in the early stages of playing the game?
No, that's a good question. And I think it predates Raid, actually. So I've played a lot of Gacha games in the past, and I've spent money on other Gacha games, and it's always been a negative experience for me. And then I actually quit Raid because of that. I played Raid in 2019, 2020, and I quit. And I stayed away for about 2 years and then rejoined during the pandemic. And the first weekend I pulled Cardiel from a void shard, and I was I'm hooked. I'm in this character.
Time.
So, but I was still debating, am I going to spend money on this game or am I not going to spend money on this game? And just over time, watching the way that they treat their player base, I decided, no, I'm not going to do it. And then Jay Giggs did his No Dime December thing. And I was I jumped on that bandwagon really hard. I was already kind of promoting that stuff during my live streams. And I was yeah, I think that Plarium has to see us as people before I feel comfortable giving them money. And they've done better at times. I will say that they don't always make mistakes. They do good things too. But just the balance has never fallen in favor where I'm I want to give them money for anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you have something specific you can kind of point to that you're if they were to fix this thing, I'd be wow, this is great. I mean, really what I'm asking is what would we need to do to be okay, I would consider spending in a game like this, because I mean, obviously for us, it's a big challenge. We need to spend. We need people to come in. Not everyone needs to be investing in the game, but we would like it for some people to help us run the business. We just have to.
Sure, and I agree. And one of the things I'll say on my channel is, if you enjoy a game and you want to support the developers, you should spend on that game. You need to vote with your wallet, right? You need to vote with your money as gamers. So I'm hoping to be a spender in Fateless. I would like to be somebody who says, this is a great game and a company who really cares about its player base. And therefore I feel comfortable, chipping in whatever it is, $20 or $50 a month, and saying, yeah, that's my entertainment dollar going to a good place.
Yeah.
So what would you have to do is a really good question, because it really depends on, I think, what your monetization strategy is. And I don't know, I haven't really heard, have you decided on your monetization strategy yet? Is it going to be subscription based? Is it going to be sort of the Gacha style where it's more of the gambling element? Do you guys even know, or are you still debating what's going on with your monetization?
Well, I guess so. So we do know there's definitely going to be a gotcha element to the game. There's definitely going to be things like battle pass on a monthly basis, or just a monthly pass, which improves people. I guess enhances the speed that you can get stuff, or will open up potentially, like a monthly champion or something along those lines. So there's a couple of different kind of elements in that. But I guess what we want to make sure is that anyone who isn't a spender can still get to the same place. Like let's say you decided it's just not for you. You don't want to spend on games. It's a free-to-play game. We want to make sure that there's not such a barrier that you couldn't be enjoying the same game as everybody else. And, it wasn't kind of like this content's basically locked behind your wallet, in effect. So
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
No, exactly. So from a monetization, it's such a complex thing because what it is monetization in a sense is saying how can people spend and invest in the game, right? And so we'll give people the options, many different ways that they can invest. But the thing that we will definitely not do is make it so you feel like if I don't spend, I can't, like Simon said, I just can't even enjoy the game, right? And that's at the core of how you have to think about monetization. It's not about like, the idea of like you said, gacha versus subscription. Because like a subscription model, I don't know, I'm not sure when the last time you saw a subscription model be really successful in mobile, where it's just, hey, this is a game and you can subscribe and stuff like that. But having just like the different elements, different ways, because people are going to find value in different parts of the game. They're going to say,
sure,
okay, I really want to collect a bunch more characters right now, for example, right? And then what would be the way to do that? Well, the way to do that would be to get involved in getting crystals. They're called crystals in our game, but you want to get a bunch of crystals so that you can have more characters, right? But if you're thinking, oh man, I've got a great squad, I've got a great team, and now I really want to invest in building up. I don't know how much we've talked about this, but I want to building up my account. I will say building up my account and having better gearing for my characters. Well, you might want to invest in getting involved more often or at more speed. So we'll have a bunch of different layers of things that people can do where they can find the value. I mean, and so what I guess would be interesting for me to understand is like which of the layers are you like, is it that there's too much advertising? Is it that the price point is too high? Is it that like what about maybe some of these other games got you to get invested and be excited? And what about what other companies are doing makes you feel like, oh man, this isn't really right for me?
Yeah, so I think it goes all the way back to Magic the Gathering, probably for me. I played collectible card games, baby. Trading card games, for a long time. And I mean, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars over the years. And that always felt not great to me for a game that was amazing. You know what I mean? Like, I loved the game with such a passion. The collectible aspect of it was cool, and like the rush of opening packs and hoping for a really good card. But simultaneously, in the long run, you're like, I'm throwing money and not having control of my fate. And that felt bad, especially when you're talking about large sums of money. When I started playing gacha games, I kind of rediscovered that experience, right? That was very similar with gacha games, where it's like you're just throwing tons of money at something.
They're really a very similar thing, right?
Right.
It's basically the evolution of opening card packs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is that. Yeah, and so, I had some experiences in other games. I remember very distinctly having a conversation with a clanmate of mine from another game, where she was a veteran, a U.S. military veteran on disability. And she was like, when my disability check comes in, I just spend it on this game. Like, that's what happens. It goes out the window in 48 hours, $100 at a time. And, she's like, obviously there are things going on there for her that led her in that path, but the game enabled her to do that. There were no protections. Do you know what I mean? And so I do feel like if you're going to have a gacha style game, from an ethical standpoint, it feels like you should offer protections to people, whether those are children who, don't have the impulse control and have access to mom or dad's credit card and can get in trouble that way, or people who might be susceptible to addictive, behaviors. And it can be as simple as like, in the US, we know that every casino is required to have like the hotline number for a gambling hotline to get help if you need it while you're there in the casino. And so I do feel like those kinds of protections are something that would make me feel good about a company that's got a monetization model like this.
No, that's a great shout out. I think that's that's something that we could definitely, put in as like a link. I mean, and frankly, we can see it in spending patterns. So if it's like, hey, we're seeing kind of like, and the reality is like, you have to really look at it as people when they're investing, assuming they're adults. I'm not trying to tell someone how to spend their money. I don't know what their situation is. Some people can spend, overspending can be $50. Some people overspending can be whatever. It could be some crazy number where you're like, I shouldn't be telling you whether you can do it or not. But I do like the idea of it's like, okay, we have the resources available. If people are noticing something in themselves, we have a way to kind of put them on the right path, like, or at least help them get some help, right? Because that is where it's an issue. The amount that people spend on the games, that's their deal. Like I spent, like you said, tens of thousands. I don't even know how much I spent on Magic. I spent a lot of money on Magic,
right?
But and also in Raid and some of these other games. But that's on me. I made that decision because I enjoy them. I like the characters. I want to collect them. I want to use them in my teams. I like mixing them up. So it's almost, but I do appreciate that. I like the idea of having, just saying like, oh, you know what? We recognize that this has the potential for someone to be like, you can take this too far. Just having a good path for them to kind of find some help if they're noticing that in themselves.
Yeah, and I know that some games have, for instance, like you can have controls even. You can say like, I want to cap my spending every month.
Right.
And then you can't opt out of that until the end of the month. And like some players might find that really frustrating. Some players might find that really comforting. Yeah. And it's a balancing act. Like you said, you can't tell people how to spend their money, but simultaneously enabling unhealthy spending without also looking out for those people, I think that's an imbalance as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough balance. I think it's a tough balance.
It is a tough balance. And this isn't just for gacha games. Like this is just the gaming industry at the moment.
Yeah.
Really.
Monetization has become like the big thing right now. It's the core. I think it's a core problem that games are having, figuring out how to be profitable while simultaneously like respecting the fact that these are real people on the other end spending real money that affects them in their daily lives. And I don't know the solution to it. I really don't. One of the things that I've tried to do with my channel is provide people an opportunity. I don't say to spenders, don't spend. I say, if you want to spend less, here's a way you can be successful and still spend less. So it's like even free-to-play players, we don't have the answer either. It's just a struggle. And I'm sure that, GODFORGE will be a link in that chain of trying to figure out what's the monetization going to look like for mobile games in the next 10 years, because we don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, Simon, you wanted to hop in? You were saying something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that it's not just a gaming thing either, is it? It goes way beyond
food and
it's just like the nature of the way we live nowadays is people spend beyond their means. People tend to put more time in things which feel addictive, and there's just these different elements. But I think for us, in the core of what we're trying to do is create a game that brings like a fun environment. So for me, I played a few of these games, and I've played a lot more where I played it for a short period of time and then just stopped because I felt like I either maxed out what I could do on a free-to-play or a main account pretty quick and I was bored, or it felt like it was just carbon copy of stuff I'd done before, so I was pretty bored. And what we're trying to make sure is like when we drop an event, it feels like an event, and it feels like in my head it's almost like I'm trying to think back to when I was in those kind of RPGs where I really felt inspired when something happened in the world. And of course, we're not building an MMO. We don't have that same sort of range of scope. But I remember playing Star Wars Galaxies, and suddenly I stumble across a crate dragon, and I'm like, guys, I need your help. Like, I'm just
you're
we
kiting it and running away.
Next thing I know, like 4 hours later, and suddenly the crew turn up and we're taking it down. But that type of feeling is really what we'd love to be able to create and what we're striving to. So, when we're going to drop an event, and I don't know, like a world boss drops, and it feels like it's impactful to your gameplay, and it feels like you want to either team up with a couple of other people in your clan, or go in solo with a couple of randos that you don't know, and try and achieve something. But that's the type of feeling that we want to do. And then ultimately, I think that if people enjoy your game and enjoy the world that it's setting and all that type of stuff, then they're more likely to want to pick up a monthly pass, or something which just makes it feel like you've got an extra bit of quality of life coming in with it. And I think that's the goal. The challenge I see, though, some people say, oh, why don't you go subscription model? And honestly, I think it's just kind of like a dying model. We really need volume of players to be seen as a success in the genre. So if you don't have a free-to-play model and you have this kind of like subscription base, then you struggle to get that same sort of volume. Yeah. So suddenly it's like, well, these guys have only got 200,000 players versus the millions of players, the kind of leaders have. So it's very difficult to go against that sort of model and go almost back in time to what the model used to be. And I don't know there's too much of a difference in terms of your overall ability to be profitable. And I think it's just scale. It just limits your ability to scale. So I don't know. There's a lot of challenge. We don't know all the answers, obviously, either. We're just gonna kind of go with what we think is going to be the best solution for players to have fun, to feel like it's a fair environment. And I think as well, like we've learned a lot from other games. So Watcher of Realms is a good example of a game where you actually just get a lot more stuff. Like you get the ability to summon more heroes at a reasonable pace. So whether you're a spender or not, you do get a lot of resources to enjoy the game. And getting that balance right in our economy is also really important, so that you can't just get everything straight away, because that's boring. But and you want that feel-good moment of, this is actually a cool hero that I don't have yet, that I've just got. You still need that feel-good moment. But if I'm an active player, then I will get more chances of that.
Well, and the big thing there that's crucial, I think, is I think the model has shifted kind of to this a la carte type of deal, right? Again, you can choose the way that you do it, right? If you just want to do the subscription model because it gives you the most value, that may be the choice that people do. But you still have the opportunity to just say, I don't want to spend it all. I want to come in like you've decided, and I just want to play the game, and we want to give you, those players that have made that decision, a full, complete, exciting experience, kind of like Simon's saying, that you're still, when the event drops and if there's this inspirational moment, that doesn't mean now I have to spend money, but it might be like, oh man, I really love the connection between the boss or the event or whatever it is, and I really want to get this character. I want to collect this thing. Like, that's what we play these games, the hero collectors, right? I want to collect this thing. And so sometimes when you go to the store, you want something and you're like, I can get this later, right? I can make it myself. Let's use a better example. I can make it myself, right? I can go spend the time and I've got the resources or whatever, or I can have it now. And we want to make sure you have that choice, and that we have this like nice spread of choices, so that when you come in and there's something new that you really want, you could choose to take longer to get that, or to take your chances with the saved up resources. Totally fine. Or you can, there's enough stuff that you can always be chasing a new weapon, always chasing new gear, always chasing new heroes, always trying to find, the next achievement, as we've talked about how the achievements and masteries. Like, I think that's the key to a successful experience, and one that is going to make a lot of people excited to play, is that we have a lot of, we don't try to say we're everything to everyone. We just say we've got a lot of really exciting, fun things for people to chase after, that are going to let them choose, how they want to invest their time and their money.
And that's going to be one of the challenges to like designing a game like this. I imagine you guys have this conversation all the time, because you have players who are going to be free-to-play players. You got low spenders, you got mid spenders, you got whales and krakens, and the game has to have a progression for each of those spending types that makes sense to those players, or you lose those players. Right. And so for me, like you asked me before, what would get me to spend money on a game? I think one is having a good progression for whatever spending type I am. But another thing, as a free-to-play player, is, let's say I'm one of those players that wants that challenge, right? I want that free-to-play challenge. do you have spending options in the game that aren't pay-to-win spending options? Can I buy cosmetics? Can I buy something in the game that maybe enhances my experience but doesn't change the challenge level? Well, because there are going to be players that want that, you know?
Right. Yeah, so I think that's cool. I think any type of big PvP where the spenders are allowed to use their main account, I think the main prizes need to be focused around stuff that doesn't actually progress your account. Because those guys, like, if I'm the biggest spender in the game, I don't need a champion as my prize.
Yeah, to win more.
I need cool stuff. I need cool stuff to brag with, or I need achievements, or I need something where I can say to the guys, look what I did. This is because I'm so good at the game, type of thing. But but what we absolutely will launch with is a normalized PvP mode where you can come in and it's literally just you say skill-based. It's not necessarily skill-based. It's more knowledge-based in this style of game, if we're being honest, but knowledge and skill kind of interweave, because it's a case of you understand the game well enough that you're making the right type of choices for your team that you're trying to draft, and then for the battles that you're facing, right? So whether you're a free-to-play, or the biggest Kraken in the game is irrelevant. It just comes down to how much you understand the game and can make the right sort of choices. And I think that will whet the appetite of a lot of people that are just competitive and they really enjoy the game, but perhaps they can't afford to be a whale or a Kraken or any of that sort of stuff. And there will be leaderboards and still cool rewards for people in that mode as well. So
places to show off. And
that's what we want. We need that balance. Like, it's very hard to balance this style of game if you allow people just to use their full accounts for everything, and that's what we've seen in a number of the games right now. So making sure there's game modes where that is relevant, I think it'll be a lot of fun for the people that do like PvP and PvE, honestly. Like, if you've got a normalized mode where you're just having to make decisions on the fly there and then, it creates quite a fun, it might be a half hour or an hour play, but it creates a moment of what type of run am I going to get? What type of experience am I going to get in this set? And this set is going to feel very different to the last time I ran this game mode. And that's
similar to the excitement that you're finding, like in opening crystals, right? It's kind of that same type of thing where it's like I've got this exciting moment that I'm building up to, and then you're like, oh, come on, are you kidding me? Like, this is the set of, let's say it's in like a roguelike, or this is the set of things options I have. Come on, all right, next time it's going to be better, right? And that's, I think the reason we play these games is because we like that. You know what I mean? We like those moments, but we also like optimizing and then taking
theory crafting and
theory crafting,
and almost like that hope of, okay, well, I've just got myself Freya. What if I get the pairing to Freya that makes her OP? And it's kind of like, okay, now I'm actually, because I've got Freya, I'm starting to think in this direction, and I'm going to try and draft units. And it might be that it's a particular rare that brings an ability that she needs in this set for this season. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I've now got this drafting decision of this rare versus Thor or something, like something crazy, and they're the type of challenges which are actually super fun, because the person who doesn't have the knowledge will instantly just pick Thor up because it's like, well, he's another legendary, whereas actually someone with the knowledge might pick someone completely different. And again, that's the type of game mode we need to weave in to the normal core game modes and the core gameplay to make sure that there's stuff for free to play which is just completely level playing field. But I think there's other things as well, which, ultimately this game or these games are generally solo games, right? So generally, although it feels like you're playing with a lot of players, you're playing it on your own. So being able to understand what my best thing is and work towards beating that, and then actually unlocking things like masteries for being able to do that, I think as well is quite a fun thing. Like going on, being able to set a direction, say, I want to earn this, and therefore I know that I need to beat this thing, or I've heard that I need to beat this thing. Again, it's just like setting yourself goals to try and overcome. I think that's part of the fun of this style of game.
I think that's where you're talking my language as a free-to-play player, right? Like free-to-play players, we were talking about the different styles, but that's one of the things. And that's the thing that I think, like, Magic the Gathering originally, like, attracted me to. I loved playing drafts. Like, do you know where
yeah.
you'd sit down there in your Magic shop or your game shop with a bunch of people and you just pass around packs and draft cards? And it was like every single experience was different. Sometimes you'd be awful and you get totally destroyed.
You're like, what is
Other
this
times
deck?
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
you'd unlock a new combo you had never played before. And so the idea of that, I think, when I think of the free-to-play experience in a place like Raid, and I think about my audience, my viewers, most of my viewers are early game and mid game players, because mid game is where free-to-play dies. Like, we hit the grind, we hit the wall that the game developer is using to incentivize spending. Right? They're saying this is where the inconvenience gets so high. Hey, but if you buy the new pack, you could get the champion that overcomes this wall. And so most free-to-play players, if they don't convert to spenders, they disappear. Right? They leave in the mid-game. But if you have gameplay that allows free-to-play players to still get those experiences that you're talking about, Sham, those big moments, you don't always have to spend money or pull a shard to have a big moment in the game, right? If it's normalized PvP, and that helps me stay around in the game so that my account just slowly progresses and I can start to approach endgame and find that passion again for solving those new puzzles, then that's a great approach to free-to-play, right? Because without that,
can I just
your
ask a
free-to-play
question,
people
though,
are going to leave.
because
yeah.
I think, like, if I go back to when I was a younger gamer, and you could have challenges which took you a hell of a long time to solve, right? And it might be that it's a grind. It might just be that you needed to improve your understanding of what needed to happen in this situation, right? But ultimately, you could have a long grind before you overcome a challenge. And I think this sort of general impatience to fight things, like to actually have like a tough challenge, is also a real, it's something which in terms of design is really difficult to overcome, because ultimately, if you drop a really cool large piece of content today, so many people want to be able to complete it today,
Right.
Yeah.
Solve it
and
now.
then are upset that there's nothing new to do tomorrow. And I mean, because what you're describing there from that kind of like mid-game, from a free-to-play point of view, you're describing a situation where it's like, well, it's more, I now need to invest way too much time for this to be considered valuable to me. There's not much that you can't do in these games free-to-play if you really put your mind to it and are patient, other than perhaps compete with high spenders in a PvP situation. So I guess it's more about when does that feeling of I'm just not progressing much anymore step in. And I think that steps in with any player, whether you're free to play or not, in any type of game.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think having, so this is when we say that we're all about epic, collectible, and deep, this is what you're talking about here, right? Because if you have enough depth, mid game is very long. If you don't have a lot of depth, mid game is very short, right? Because you basically, what will happen is you go beginning of the game, I get some characters, then I get some epics, then I get some legendaries. Cool. Now I'm in the mid game, right? I've leveled up my characters. Now I've beaten all the relatively easy challenges quickly, and I move to, people call it end game. But if you have what I would consider, like optimally, and this is something that we're going to strive for. I don't know if it takes work and it's not easy to do, but if you can strive to have depth and complexity actually not the complexity, depth to the way that you build your characters and you build your teams and you solve challenges, then the mid game can be quite long and exciting, and it gives you time to make it so someone who is free to play is invested enough that they want to do what you're saying, Simon, which is spend the time to actually figure out the next layer of challenges, right?
Well,
but the problem
also,
is what you're saying. Sorry,
go.
The problem is that instead of it being like this, it's like this, right? That jump is what I think is where it's probably kicking out most of these free to play mid game players. And so if you can really figure out how to it might still be a step, you can make it more like little steps into the end game, then I think you can hold on to more players. They can have more time where they're excited about doing these challenges, and then maybe, and it's not going to be everybody, but maybe they'll say, actually, I like this game enough that even though it's a grind, and I have to go on these websites to figure out what to do, and I need to optimize my account and whatever, I'm still willing to keep playing in that end game. Go ahead, Simon.
I do think as well, like if you're bringing in events which feel different and fresh and exciting on a regular basis, let's say, something every month, but maybe every 3 months, something which is like a big drop, and it feels like I've got something completely fresh to do, and it scales over what level you are in and stuff like that. That actually just elongates that experience as well, because you're not just focused on that thing that you're trying to overcome. It's like I'm spreading my focus now onto other stuff, which I find fun. And this is where a lot of these style games at the moment for me fall down, is that, okay, I might have to refocus on something else, but it's not fun because I've refocused on that 1,000 times already. Like it's just, I'm just doing the same thing.
Right.
So, I mean, and again, that's a challenge for us to beat, but it's something we've spoken about at length in, numerous sessions. It's like, how do we make sure that we're bringing something fresh consistently through our live ops?
And I do think, Sham, one of the things that you were saying about the jump up, that can be an issue, but also the duration. How long is it in that mid game? Like, and how do you feel about it? Like Simon's saying, like, are you giving me new, fresh things to do even though I'm in the mid game that can kind of like help me get through the, the grind? I personally don't mind a grind. I'm end game in raid. I can do everything in raid that a spender can do, except I can't compete in high level arena. But I can still do Nightmare Hydra. I can still complete all the hard mode dungeons. Like, I can do everything. And I earned that through time and knowledge or skill, as Simon was saying, and effort, and not money. And that's meaningful to me. It doesn't have to be meaningful to anybody else. I'm not trying to say I'm better than anybody else. But for my personal satisfaction in the game, like, overcoming that mid game was an accomplishment to me. That being said, like, I would prefer a mid game that, different games do it differently. I know this is a different genre, but I think of Star Wars: The Old Republic. I don't know if any of you played that MMO.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the wonderful things about that game was that the mid game was really robust, right? Yeah. Because they have these deep character stories, and you travel all around the galaxy and see your favorite Star Wars places, and you get to like get into the lore and the depth and the world without actually really gaining a lot of powers in the mid game. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get one every 5 levels or something, and you're like, well, I'm not really progressing my character, but I'm progressing that story and my immersion in the game. And so there are different.
How do you think you achieve that? Because we look at other genres of game as well when we're trying to kind of flesh out our features and what we want to do in live ops. How do you think you translate that into, a gacha game where you don't have this kind of open world scenario?
Well, I think story elements are good, right? Anything that attaches a player to their experience, so it's not just clicking buttons on a screen and pixels I don't care about, getting that emotional investment. So if there are storylines, if there are customization options, those are great. You talked about unique events, like one-off events that don't have to be, like the same just grindy events every week. Like, those are good ways to grab people. I would say another thing that would be possible that could help, and I don't know if you can do this or not, but it would be giving player options to control aspects of their game. For instance, do you have player-run PvP? Can clans or guilds have an in-clan PvP match? Can they do that? Can they set parameters for that? Can they import artwork for their clan crest? Could they do something like that? And again, anything that personalizes it helps. Anything that, immerses people in the world would help. Because I don't think, like you said, you can't get too easy. You can't just give it to people because that will be dissatisfying.
It's the worst. So many times we see in our kind of like board of ideas, increase the rate that I get this thing, right? So make make this much easier. And I think that's probably born from people's frustration that they're not of a level that they want to be, or they're going up against whales or whatever. But it's a terrible solution. It's just a terrible solution. As soon as you make everything easy, it's so boring. Like, I've played games where hero collectors, where I own every hero, and I'm just kind of like going about my way, and I'm like, I've got nothing left to really do or to get or to strive towards or be excited about. So I don't know, you just lose all of the exciting moments when you do that. And that's definitely not the solution for me. I'm not saying that summoning rates need to be the same as we see in some of these other games and stuff but I don't think they need to be much different. I don't think that the rates are the problem. I think maybe the volume of summons that you could get should change, and that way you kind of get that experience more often. But I don't think just making stuff easier is ever the solution. In fact,
no. And for free to play, I would hate it to be too easy. Like, if I am free to play, or even if I'm like that kind of spender who only spends on cosmetics because I like the challenge of free to play, as soon as you take away the challenge, you take away the reason to be in the game. And if you take away the challenge, you take away the reason to spend on the game, right? Because it's like you're getting hit on both sides. So I do think that's a balancing act. But for instance, like in a gacha game, I've played gacha games where you have a base and you can build that base, in strategic ways that help your account and in cosmetic ways that make you feel like it belongs to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those two
just
things
talking about this yesterday, actually. Oh, sorry,
yeah, those two things are really meaningful to me as a free-to-play player, because I want to have reasons to like stay motivated to do the challenges and the grind and still get like at least it doesn't have to be a daily reward, but frequent rewards in some other ways that make me just feel like the game cares about me as a free-to-play player.
Yeah, I think one of the ways we're like one of the innovations that we're doing right now that we've already talked about before with the kind of achievement or the masteries that are achievement based. I think that's one of those ones where it's like what you're describing sounds a lot like this will hit some of those notes. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's a catch-all. It's gonna be the thing that okay, now this fixes this issue for people. But I do think that the idea that you can do something, you can be like, hey, I want to chase after this achievement, and I know it's this particular grind, or I think it's here, or I need to go find out how to go get it, and then you can go and achieve that in like a session. I think like those little and that doesn't just mean like, oh cool, I've got this achievement and now it's posted somewhere, but that it literally gives you something in game, and now you have this new possibility for your characters. I think that's kind of like a really interesting way that we're kind of changing the way that you build your account and make it feel like it's yours. Because like Simon and I could start at the same time, or Colred, maybe you start at the same time as another content creator, and you might just choose to do different things, right? And those choices will, of course, affect your gear and affect the heroes that you get. But now it's going to affect the way you can build your champions. I think that's really interesting in and of itself, right? It's not again, it's not a catch-all, but I think it does hit that note of like, okay, I've got something to do. I always have something really interesting to be chasing after, and it's gonna take you a long time, really long time, to find all the different things and kind of get the achievements and get the associated masteries. So people should be, I don't know, for me, it's like
and
one
also
of the things
it's a live ops thing as well, right? So if we do, let's say we do launch that next wave of story, and and it correlates with an event that we're bringing in, and maybe an extension of campaign, all that type of stuff. If we can then live ops drop in, we just dropped in 10 new masteries that you can go and achieve by kind of like fulfilling some of these different things. And one of them, so we've got this kind of mastery system. There's a whole bunch of stuff you just know what it's going to be, and you go out and fight, you go out and achieve that. And then a smaller selection are going to be this kind of like mayhem masteries where they're completely unknown, and the first time someone achieves it will like pop up, and your clan can then see what that person has done, and it's like, damn, how the hell have you just got that? And so it's kind of like, well, I went in with this team, I'm not really sure what I did. It's like it's almost trying to problem solve what that system was.
And they're now written into history in a sense, right? And that's really exciting, because that's not something like there's for some of these achievements. There's nothing you can do to say I'm going to invest more. I'm going to pay. You can't pay to win to do something like this, right? I mean,
Right.
unless you're, it's just like I was clever or lucky and I found this thing, right? And now,
I deciphered something. Like
yeah,
little tells in
Yeah.
the game where it's like, okay, someone who enjoys that. Not everyone does. Not everyone wants to do this thing. So some people will just be like, I'll go to that website and I'll find out what the achievements are. But some people, they really do like to be the detective on a level. And it's like, hold on a minute, could that be one of the clues I
sign
need
over there.
to, and that's the type of feeling we want. In the storytelling, we kind of drop hints and stuff like that as well. And when we're working with the lore writer, it's like, how do we bring this in at a level that fits? Because
right.
So it's not just like so cryptic, no one would ever get it, but also
Right.
it's not just kind of like on a plate and you've got the answer straight away. So yes.
Are any of you familiar with the game Suikoden?
Yes.
I don't
You
know.
are.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like one of those seminal hero collectors from back in like the PS2 days. And I don't know that it was a commercial success, but it became this kind of
It's
like
cult classic though.
Yeah, it's a cult classic, and it's just this amazing RPG and hero collector. And it's based on like a novel, like a Chinese novel from the Ming Dynasty or something, where there are 108 heroes, celestial heroes that fall to Earth and then like band together to fight injustice. And you go around as the main character, and you're trying to collect these
first hero
108
collector, really.
heroes. Yeah, it's an early hero collector, and but it has things like that. Like in order to get a character, you have to like go to this area of the map and find an environmental drop. And then you have to fight this battle with only these two characters. And then you have to find this gear piece. And then when you do all three of those things, it unlocks a new story scene where you meet a character that has a whole backstory and you have dialogue with them and stuff like that. And then they join your crusade. And some of those characters are playable characters. They're, champions in your game. And others just join your base and like open a new building or
it's just a new building.
Right. And they just create a new bonus for the rest of your team, but they don't actually they're not combat playable. And that game was not like, there was no energy requirements, right? There was no there was no monetization. You bought the game, you owned it, you had it at home, but it was still the kind of game you would sink 500 hours into just to collect all of the little 108. Yeah. And so when I think about like grindy games that still provide like incentive for you to do new things all the time, even if it's not the highest end of PvP or something, I think of games like Suikoden because, man, I sunk so many hours in that game. And I still remember, this is 25 years later, I still remember that game as one of the best hero collectors of all time.
Yep. Yeah, it's one of those, I mean, that definitely massive inspiration from that because, I mean, the idea of that is exactly what you said. It's like, I'm just there to get something for the sake of getting something, for the sake of an achievement. It does something for me. It does something. So, and it's not just achievements, right? We want that same feeling in our community systems, right? I keep saying clan versus guild, but clan, in our clan system, we want people to feel like, okay, maybe if I go out and do this thing, now everybody in my clan is affected by that, and that's really cool. So I love that you've got that reference like in the pocket, because most people just won't really know. I mean, they probably will have heard of Suikoden, but I love that you've got the whole like gacha. You understand it wasn't gacha, but hero collector concept and achievement based kind of collecting. Because I think for us, that model doesn't exactly work. We don't want to say you have to go out and get these heroes, and the only way to get them is to find this whatever to decode this thing. But I think that we can kind of like take a piece of that, right? And we can say, hey, we're going to take that for our mastery system. We're going to take that for our clan system. We're going to, sprinkle it into other systems as well. We haven't really talked about it as much, but it's, I love that you got that. But Brad, man, I haven't heard you speak at all. And I feel like I want to hear if you had something that you wanted to note on the design side because you're in it every day. That we're doing.
Yeah, no, this is great. Some episodes I talk a lot. Sometimes the conversation's cooking, and I just enjoy the ride. Great talk, guys. I guess Colred, first off and most importantly, I heard you say RTS. Which RTSs did you play? Sorry, just real quick. I have to know this.
Yeah, I know that you're a StarCraft guy. The one I spent the most time in was actually a little kind of indie one. It was called Kohan. I don't know. There was Kohan Immortal Sovereigns and Kohan Ahriman's Gift, and that was probably where I spent most of my time. But I certainly did like Age of Empires and all of those back in the day as well.
I still play Age of Empires all the time. Yeah. So okay, cool. I guess like Sham said, working in design, is there anything that you because we all, when we're playing games, we're like, gosh, why don't they do this? Or this is totally stupid. Why'd they do this? Do you have anything in your experiences in this genre? It doesn't have to be Raid. It can be any game. Where you're like, I hope you guys innovate. I hope you guys do this right. I hope you guys don't do this. In terms of like a gameplay feature, it doesn't have to be monetization or anything. But is there anything that on top of your head of where like, I think this genre could innovate as far as game mechanics in this way?
I do think that the gacha genre lags behind some other genres in the way that they develop their games, and I think it's probably based on the financial model. But one of the things that we're constantly complaining about in Raid is, why don't you player test some of this stuff beforehand? And like just have like a public test server, or just have maybe even like just a group of people that you apply to be your test like players, so that you can figure out some of this stuff ahead of time. So I guess I would ask, like, is that something that...
That's not enough, though. Like what you're saying, all of these companies 100% are doing. The question is, are they listening to it, and do they have a pipeline to make it so that they can action those things, right? Hey, we heard that this thing, and what are their priorities? So you might, let's say you as a player say, oh, this thing is so annoying and I hate it, and I can't believe you didn't test it. But then from their lens, they might be going, well, it looks like people get so frustrated that they end up spending a bunch of extra money. So why not changing that, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing that you have to kind of look from our perspective. I will say that obviously we have to make money as a company, but our focus is much more community focused. And I think that, that's not to say that the community says, I don't like, not getting crystals for free every day all the time, and we're going to give it to them. It means that we're much more, we're leaning more in that direction when we think about decisions and crossroads. Like we're like, okay, what's right for the player base? What's right for having people stick around for the long run? Because that's right for us as well. And that's the thing. That's the thing to remember. Sorry, I just jumped in because I was like,
you're good. I agree with you, but I do feel like in that space, one of the things that you said is like, they'll do something, like companies will do something that they know their players hate, but that makes them money.
Right. And
that's where I feel like, just as a person who's run his own businesses for a long time, I've been self-employed my whole life. Like, I feel like that's something that I can't get behind. I'm like, you should be able to offer value and good player experiences and make money simultaneously.
It's lazy.
And it is. And it's exploitative. You're literally saying to your players, we don't really care about you. We care about how much you spend. And I think those two things should go hand in hand. And so if I were to like make any kind of pitch to you guys at all, I would say, like, have an eye on that at all times. You're doing great with the transparency. I love it. Like, I'm rooting for you guys. You are gamers making a game. Like, you're us. Do you know what I mean? You are us, and we're pulling for you. But at the same time, don't forget that you're us. Like, don't get into it where you're like, oh, we've got investors and we've got a bottom line, and that means we need to squeeze every last dollar out. Just say to yourself, how can I do both at the same time? And as long as you're keeping an eye on that, I think you'll do well enough that players will support you in the long run.
And that's really right.
I think. Sorry, I was just going to say. I think the experience we've had with HH Gaming. I know it's not the same. It's not building a game, but actually we do build a lot of tools for people that enjoy this style of game. And again, we have to have that balance. We pay developers to develop these tools, to improve these tools, to do all the stuff on the website. And we've had those kind of decisions to make along the way as well. It's like, at what point does this remain? It's the same thing, right? It's a free-to-play model, but with premium perks if people choose to take those on. And often we try and make sure that we keep that balance in a good spot. Throwing out free premium when we think it's both a good thing for the community, but also a good thing to show people that the premium exists. Like there's always two things. It's still a business decision to do that, but ultimately it's kind of a business decision focused around trying to deliver the best product we can to make people continue to use it. And
that win-win mentality is exactly what you're saying.
I think that's exactly the way we're going about trying to build this game and create Fateless as a long-standing studio. It's how do we create a product which people want to come back to, really enjoy, and then, as you said earlier, Colred, it's like won't mind using some of their entertainment budget if they choose to. You know, if they choose to do that on gaming, then maybe they'll do it on this game. That's kind of like the aim, because it does still have to turn profit. It still has to try and recoup the millions that we spend on building this thing, and it's absolutely insane how much goes into this stuff, which way beyond anything I ever dreamed, honestly, when we first started this project. But yeah, I think it's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Sham, go ahead.
I was just going to kind of like echo that. I mean, a big part of it is just thinking about, because for us it is good if people are excited and evangelistic and they want to go out. Like if what you're saying about the game you're playing, even if you're playing it and spending a lot of money on it, if you're all the time saying, I hate this game, it's so predatory, it's so, annoying, that's not good for us.
No.
We're here for the long view, man. We're not here just for the first game. We're here for people to come back and know that we, like you said, we're players, man. We want to make a game that we would love to play and be proud of. We're proud to say it's ours. We don't want to be like, yeah, we made this game called GODFORGE. You don't want to be like shrinking away, explaining that you, like you said, you're exploiting your players or your super or whatever it is, right? Whatever the sentiment is. We really think that, like you said, like I said, it's that long view. We're paying attention to the players. We're building the best product that we can, and that's going to translate to people investing in the game. It just will, right? That's how. Yeah. That's how these things work. People.
Oh God! Sorry. Go ahead, Sham. I didn't.
No, because people are excited and they like something, and that means that they want to get involved, and it becomes like a part of their lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure. Well, no, I just saw we were approaching, up against it pretty soon here, so I wanted to make sure and get my question in. Colred, something we like to ask people is just gut reaction, the first thing that comes to your mind, and Robin Hood has already been taken. If we are going to add a myth or god or legend to the game, who is the one that stands out to you? We've had like Papa Drock, say William Wallace, put him in the game with a big, do you have anything like that where you're like, come on guys, like get this hero in your game?
I'm a big fan of mythology. I love Norse mythology, Greek mythology. So I would say, one character I think you have to include is Prometheus. I think he's an absolutely amazing, space to develop story, even conflict within your story. So I think that Prometheus is an amazing character. I would like to see just, as you expand the factions, I'd like to see where you go with the factions. So certainly, here being in the US, we have Native American culture, that would be a very deep dive. There's Pacific Island culture, there's other places that you can go in the world that maybe not everybody knows that much about, but would be interesting. I do think one of the challenges for you guys must be, how do you treat mythologies that are current, active mythologies that are being celebrated or still utilized in the world today? But I think Zoroastrian culture is really interesting, right? We were talking about Ahriman's gift. Ahriman is a character there, and the conflict of good and evil and Zoroastrianism is really cool. But the one character that pops out to me is Prometheus.
That's a good one.
Oh, wait. And Robin Hood.
That's good. You just want to make sure that was clear.
That was a test, Colred. That was a test.
I do want to say this to Simon. Simon just gonna. I do want to say this.
Okay. No, it's fine.
I do want to say this to anybody from the UK who's on this project. One of the things, because I've been following the podcast, and I know this is a running joke, but if people are celebrating a character somewhere in the world really passionately, don't you think that would be a good thing to include in the game, even if you don't like it?
Well, Colred, can you back me up here? In the UK, they view Robin Hood as like a meme and a joke. Here in America, we view him as like a badass. Like he's a fighter that steals from the rich to help the poor, and he's an amazing archer, like breaking records in battle.
any character that's had 20 movies and 50 television shows made about him should probably be in the game. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Simon, can we get confirmation?
Well, if Robin Hood's down in, then so's Pinocchio.
Hey, I'm okay with Pinocchio. He's pretty cool. No, I do think there are other characters that, like, clearly you can't fold into the mythology. But I don't know why, like, King Arthur is such a badass and Robin Hood is not also such a badass. I don't get that, I guess. I'm an American, so I mean, we still call it soccer.
We'll see.
Yeah,
maybe we squeeze him in as a rare,
don't worry, I got you.
A rare or an uncommon or something, but we'll see.
That's right. Well, no, Colred, this has been really fun. Thanks for taking the time to join us. And down below, we're gonna link to Colred's channel. Check out his stuff over there. He's producing amazing content, and we will also link to the Fateless Discord and all of that if you want to participate in the conversation and leave feedback on the game as well. So, hey, Colred, Sham, Simon, thanks everybody, and we will see you soon in the next Fateless podcast episode. Cheers.